Okay. We've got one more example here, and I'm going to move through this one a little bit quicker. I may not dive into all of the details on this one just because I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and we do have a couple of other things to talk about at the end here. But I do want to talk about this example because it introduces process business rules and uses those in a workflow process. So in this example, we are working on assigning cases or support tickets to people, and we're also worrying about how long it should take to resolve those tickets. And that both of those things will actually vary based off of some categories in our cases module. So depending on the product that is being worked on and maybe a type in some examples, we're going to assign those cases to different people, and they're also going to have different SLAs associated with them. Some of them have to be resolved more quickly than others. Most of our cases are going to be assigned based off of the product, but some products are sub-segmented below that based off the type before we're assigning them. And so here's a table just kind of showing you how we're looking to assign our tickets in this example, our cases. So for product A, B, and C, it's pretty simple. All of the tickets go to one person per product. So product A, for example, goes to Chris Oliver and has a 2-day period. Product B goes to Will Weston and has a 3-day period. We're also potentially needing to alert different people if that SLA period is exceeded. So again, based off of product or other factors, we're going to email different people with an alert saying that we've exceeded the SLA on this particular case. Now, if we look at product D, it got a little bit more complicated. For product D, we also have to look at the type of case. And again, based off of the case type, we're going to have different assignments, different wait periods, and so on. So we are going to leverage process business rules in this example to simplify managing a process that has so many different conditions and so many different resultant things that we need to do based off of those conditions. We'll want to terminate this process if the case gets resolved. So just like our last workflow process had an early exit condition, same thing here. We don't need to send an SLA exceeded notification if the case is resolved. And we'll also need to have a gateway that has different wait periods once we know how long to wait before we send that SLA exceeded notification. And in this example, you saw those email addresses listed on that previous screen as well. This customer needed to send, actually I don't know if that's actually true, but in my example anyways, the people I'm sending my SLA notifications to are not necessarily users associated to that case, or maybe they're not even Sugar users, period. And so I needed a way to track the email addresses in the case itself when the case was not actually linked to those users. And so I'm going to use a text field inside of the cases module to store those email addresses and then turn around and send to that text field as the recipient. And again, I made a note here at the bottom of the screen. You always want to make sure you're dealing with those exceptions to the rule. What happens if the product and type are not assigned to a specific value that we're expecting? What if a new case product gets added and no one comes in and updates the workflow? What do we want to have happen in that scenario? Is there a default value that we want to assign? Do we want to send an email to somebody? There's lots of options for how to deal with it, but we need to make sure we've thought about how we want to handle that. So besides coming up with my design here, I have created that text field for tracking email address. I've created some email templates as well. One for sending an email if the SLA period gets exceeded, and the other for notifying people if something does go wrong, if I can't find who to assign a case to, for example, to have an email that goes to somebody to say, hey, something went wrong here, you need to go look at this case and assign it, so it doesn't just float out there forever untouched. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the process business rules module this time. I'm going to go ahead and create a new business rule, and I'm actually going to only partially build this out for you because you're going to see in a second, building a business rule takes a lot of clicking. So I've built the whole thing out, but I want to show you how I did that and start from scratch first. My process business rule essentially has two sections to it. It's got conditions, things I want to check. It's got conclusions, things I want to do. So my conditions here are going to look at the case's product field. And in some cases, we also need to check that case type field. So I'm going to add that into my conditions area as well. And then once I've done that, I can go ahead and I can just click into each of these areas. So I can say the product equals A, for example. In that case, I don't have to check the type, so I'm going to just leave those blank. And I'm going to start looking at what I want to return for my workflow. So in my workflow, there's a couple of different things that I need to do. First of all, I need to know, so that my business process can wait the appropriate time period, how long it's going to have to wait. And so I'm going to go ahead and return that value to my workflow process. Product A looks like it was 2 days, so I'm going to go ahead and just pass back the value of 2 to my workflow. So this return value column is going to be referenceable in your workflow process, in your process definition, after you run this business rule. You'll be able to say, okay, if that answer was 2, do this. If the answer was 3, do that instead. Besides returning things to my workflow process, I can also update fields for my business rule. And this is where using a business rule for something with multiple conditions and multiple returned steps like this is really useful. So I can go ahead and I can set the assigned user for these cases to Chris right from my business rule. And I can also set that email recipient to Megan@ex.com, and that's going to push that value into that text field for me. So I would just repeat this process for each of my products. Again, this is where I said it starts to get lots of clicking, because then I would come back over here, put in my return value of 3 days, assign these cases to Will, and send the email to same recipient, Megan@ex.com. Let's go ahead and let's do one where we're going to also look at that case type. So let's just skip ahead and pretend I was looking at product D. For product D, I'm going to also fill in type equals, well, it looks like installation is my first one. And that's going to have a 2-day wait period. And assign to Max, and email to Justin@ex.com. And then I would repeat that with my other subtypes or types by filling the rest of the details out for the next type. So I'm going to go ahead and exit that. Oh, it's going to yell at me because I didn't finish filling this one out. Let's just get rid of it. I'll show you what the completed one looks like just really quickly so you can see that. Here it is with all of those conditions. So I've got A, B, and C, and then D for each of the 3 types with the number of days to wait, the assigned user, and the email recipient. So if I jump over to my process definition module, I can now create my process definition on the cases module. We're going to start this when a new case gets created. In this case, we're going to start it for every single new case. So all I'm going to put in here is to do this on new updates. I'm going to or new records only. I'm going to leave my criteria box completely blank because I want to do this for every single new case that comes into my system. Once that case comes in, I'm going to have Sugar run that business rule. So that's also done through an action. Instead of picking change field or add related record, I'm going to pick business rule here. And then I just have to tell Sugar which business rule I want to use. And business rules are pretty much always followed by a gateway to do something based off of those returned values. I'm going to check the result. And remember, it's returning to me the number of days that I have to wait. So I am going to follow this up with some wait periods. Wait 1 day. Wait 2 days. and I clicked the wrong icon there, and wait 3 days. I'm also watching the clock and realize that I probably need to wrap up this example. So what I'm going to do is just do one of these for you. Do wait 1 day. Instead of making you watch me do the same thing 3 times, we're going to pretend there's 3 of these here. We're going to pretend that one was set up correctly. Oh, it's not even going to like me because I picked the wrong thing there. Okay. So we're just going to have 3 of these guys. And again, we go in to configure that settings, tell it what to do based off of, instead of a module field evaluation, a business rules evaluation. So if the business rule returns 1, we're going to go to the wait 1 day. And then the same thing if we wait 2 days, wait 3 days for the other 2 actions, or the other 2 criteria. We're going to want to converge these guys together again, these different branches. And this is also where I would add in that exception element to my process. If my business rule doesn't return 1, 2, or 3, then something is wrong. It did not get the results that I was expecting because every single thing in my business rule was supposed to return 1, 2, or 3. So if I do want to have that exception monitoring, this is where I'd send my exception email. And what I would do is I would make that my default action. If none of my conditions are true, it doesn't equal 1, it doesn't equal 2, it doesn't equal 3, then I want to go to the send exception email branch and send an exception email with my appropriate email template to the appropriate person. In this case, I'm going to do my admin, which I think her name is Jen. There we go. And then if my wait period gets reached, I want to go ahead and send, oops, wrong icon again, send my message to whoever I'm sending my exception alert to. In this case, it's that text field. So it's going to be a recipient in the cases module where I'm going to pick that SLA notification email field and then pick the right template. Connect all this together, and of course, I would also have potentially put that parallel gateway in at the beginning again to do that monitoring to make sure when my case gets resolved, it goes ahead and exits this process. It stops waiting to see if the SLA is going to be exceeded. This, again, is going to be one that's going to be a bit more work to test. To really test something like this thoroughly, you really want to test each possible flow, so each product, each type, different combinations thereof to make sure that the case gets routed appropriately. You're also going to want to, again, potentially shorten those wait periods. You don't want to have to wait 1, 2, or 3 days while you're testing this workflow process to see what happens. And a couple of other things about design here. You might want to show an SLA due date in a field rather than having it just be a wait period. That way the users could prioritize which cases to work on based off the SLAs. You might want to have a default wait period in that exception branch so that if there is no SLA that's determined, you still have a reminder email that gets sent eventually saying, hey, this case still is open.